Meatpacking CEOs were called in front of Congress to testify on pricing and alleged market manipulation. Executives from Tyson Food, JB USA, Cargill, and National Beef Packing Company have been enjoying record profits during the pandemic. During Wednesday's hearing before the House Agriculture Committee, they were asked directly if these gains were ill-gotten and achieved through conspiring with each other to fix prices.
So, I want to get the yes or no and whether or not you all had agreement on pricing.
No.
No.
Not that I am aware of.
All right.
The CEOs went on to claim that price increases were merely a response to rising labor costs and supply chain disruptions that also increased costs. But that's not entirely true. First off, as Chairman Scott noted, prices started rising before the pandemic. It began back in 2015.
You all deny that you acted improperly or illegally. But none of you has been able to explain this meat margin chart and why your shares kept rising since 2015. Now, it is very important that we get a correct and honest answer here, because this is the crust of the issue. Let me tell you, this can't possibly happen in a competitive market.
Even the White House last December called out meat packers, released data showing that profit margins at the top meat processing companies in the U.S. are all up significantly. Now, if the price hikes were merely in response to rising costs, then margins would stay flat. But instead, they've gone up as much as 50%. Net margins are up 300% since the pandemic started. CEOs claimed that they didn't coordinate with each other to increase prices, but the companies have individually admitted or at least paid fines related to price fixing. Back in January, JBS-owned Pilgrim's Pride, one of the largest chicken producers in the country, pleaded guilty and agreed to pay a $107 million fine related to it conspiring to increase chicken prices and pass those costs on to consumers. And Tyson Foods agreed to pay more than $221 million to settle similar price-fixing charges. It's estimated that rising meat prices account for about 25% of the increase in consumer prices for food, a metric often cited to raise the alarm about inflation. Well, you can blame the oligopoly in the meat packing industry for that one. There's a noticeable change in tone from the White House when it comes to student loan forgiveness. Now, to recap quickly, so far, the Biden administration has resisted any calls to use executive action to forgive student loan debt. It has claimed it doesn't have the authority to do so, and it's withheld releasing a memo that outlines what authorities it does have. And it's alleged that only Congress can cancel debt by passing legislation, which Biden would be willing to sign. Here was Press Secretary Jen Psaki just a few weeks ago claiming, hey, this is up to Congress, not the president.
Has the president had conversations with Senator Schumer, and is he, moving on this issue where he's more open to the idea of...
The president's always been happy to sign a bill into law passed by Congress that would cancel $10,000 in student debt. There hasn't been any decision made about other executive actions.
Well, now something is different. During a private meeting on Monday with members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, President Joe Biden reportedly said he was considering taking executive action to erase at least some student loan debt. According to an aide who was present at the meeting, Biden told lawmakers who all supported debt cancellation, quote, "You're going to be happy with what I do about student loan debt relief." And this time, Press Secretary Jen Psaki didn't immediately walk it back and instead left the door open for it, saying the president is considering executive action and will make a final decision before restarting student loan payments, which are currently on hold through the end of August.
Nobody has paid us a penny in federal student loans since the president took office. And what we've said from here is that, and what he reiterated, is that he will make a decision before there's an end to that pause. Right now it's been extended through August. And we have talked about how we are looking at, and he is looking at, other executive authority options he has to bring relief to people who have student loans. So that's what he conveyed during the meeting yesterday.
Well, regarding using executive action, though, I mean, is that something, a step now that the president is seriously looking at?
Well, we've talked about that in the past, so he's continuing to look at it.
Now look, there is zero reason to get excited about anything this White House says. Biden has failed to deliver on most of his campaign promises, and I'm still waiting on a $600 check the guy owes me. The change in tone here has at least triggered Republicans. Conservative senators introduced legislation that would block any student loan forgiveness, although that bill has no chance of going anywhere in the chamber controlled by Democrats. Mitt Romney fired off this tweet in response to the news. Quote, "Desperate polls call for desperate measures. Dems consider forgiving trillions in student loans. Other bribe suggestions? Forgive auto loans, forgive credit card debt, forgive mortgages, and put a wealth tax on the super rich to pay for it all. What could possibly go wrong?" Well, nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. Those are fantastic ideas, Senator. Let's hope Joe Biden is listening. And finally, hedge fund dick Bill Hwang was arrested Wednesday morning. He was charged with securities fraud and for racketeering for his role in the collapse of his former investment fund, Archegos. Failure cost banks $10 billion back in the spring of 2021. Why this is interesting and not just a run-of-the-mill story about one rich asshole stealing from others, Hwang at one point allegedly used the scheme to secretly and illegally gain majority control of a major media company, CBS Viacom, which is now Paramount Global. Hwang managed this through doing deals with banks, entering into so-called total return swap agreements with them. These financial instruments are tied to the value of an underlying asset. The firm selling the swaps then has to buy the asset. They enable an institutional investor to buy up significant chunks of companies without disclosing their ownership, as they would have to if they just directly bought the stocks. In this case, Hwang bought up a ton of total return swaps based on the value of CBS Viacom stock. Everything unraveled for Archegos and Hwang when CBS Viacom stock took a nosedive. Now, this raises questions about other publicly traded companies. How many of them are secretly owned and by whom? And was Bill Hwang only caught because he did the Wall Street equivalent of Krusty the Clown betting against the Harlem Globetrotters? Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.